Thanks for joining us tonight. There has been another plane crash in our area just over 2 hours ago. An aerobatic plane went down at the Villeneuve Airport, just north of Edmonton. This is where the accident occurred. An eyewitness tells us the plane crashed just east of the runway at the light industrial airport. There are crews on the scene surveying the wreckage of the Pitts single-engine plane, said to be flown by Ian McLeod of Edmonton. The crash is said to look quite serious, but McLeod did escape with very minor injuries. We do have a crew on the scene. We'll have a full update for you tonight on 11th Hour Eyewitness News. And federal investigators are still trying to figure out why a light plane flown by a Spruce Grove man crashed on Wednesday, killing both passengers. The wreckage was spotted by searchers yesterday. The plane went down just south of Edson on a flight from Kamloops, BC. The victims have now been identified as 48-year-old pilot Paul Bierman and his 63-year-old father-in-law, Emil Trube. The Trube was visiting Canada from Mexico. 3 months ago, hundreds of Canadian peacekeepers left behind their families and friends to try to stem the brutal civil war in Yugoslavia. In a moment, the latest on their efforts in Sarajevo. But first, a local story. Reporter Janice Johnson met with one local family waiting for the father and husband to return home safely.
Here's a letter from him.
No Saturday. Janice Johnson, CFRN, Eyewitness News.
Serb snipers have stepped up their attacks in Sarajevo, and today, as United Nations forces tried to negotiate a secure corridor through the sniper territory for an emergency supply convoy, one of their vehicles came upon a cluster of people hit by sniper fire. In an act of bravery, Sergeant Mario Forrest of Quebec climbed out of the armored carrier who was riding in to rescue 2 women. Martin Bell with that story.
The main street in New Sarajevo this morning. Harder to know than now.
To local news now. A frightening night for a 14-year-old Edmonton girl. Police would like to talk to 2 men who drove her home after an alleged sexual assault early this morning. The 14-year-old was babysitting a toddler when the father came home about 2:30 and allegedly forced her to inhale nail polish before sexually assaulting her. The girl did manage to escape the Alberta Avenue residence half an hour later. She was picked up by 2 men who offered to drive her to her West End home. No names have been released, and so far no charges have been laid. And a bizarre incident sent a police sergeant to hospital early this morning. 3 officers responded shortly after midnight to a West End domestic dispute.
The report said that a man was beating a woman. They arrived, they tried to talk to the man, and at one point he turned on the sergeant, and a scuffle ensued, and the sergeant's little finger was bitten to the bone.
The officer was taken to hospital where he was treated and released. He may have permanent nerve damage. 31-year-old Donald McLaughlin will appear in court Monday. He's charged with assault causing bodily harm and assaulting a police officer. The woman was treated in hospital for severe bruising and undetermined back injuries. A 27-year-old Bonnyville man was killed early this morning in a single-vehicle accident. The crash happened just west of Alberta Beach on Highway 633 at about 5 this morning. Stony Plain RCMP are still investigating, and they have not yet released his name. In news from across the country today, not much of a weekend for Air Canada employees. The natives returned to Oka, and some wild stunts at the Stampede in Calgary. First to Montreal. A lot of nervous Air Canada employees this weekend after yesterday's news that the airline will cut its workforce by 1,800 employees. Ticket agents were given the news on their computer terminals.
I was going to be laid off in Halifax last year, and so in order not to be laid off, I went to Montreal. I think if I stay in Montreal, I might have a fair chance to stay on.
I'm expecting in November, and that's when the layoffs are going to take place, so I really don't know what's going to happen.
The company insists the move is necessary to improve competitiveness and restore long-lost profitability.
We lost $74 million in 1990, $218 million more in 1991, and $164 million in the first 3 months of 1992. That should be sufficient to show that we need to restructure the company.
Natives in Kanesatake, Quebec are together this weekend for a powwow. It's called The Echoes of a Proud Nation. The event marked the 2nd anniversary of the Oka confrontation, and many of the people there are still bitter.
We're living in a police state, and when it comes to Mohawk people, especially us, that they'll do anything and everything they can to undermine us and destabilize us.
The time has come for Native people to make a stand. Hydropower, natural resources. We have to stand for our rights.
60,000 people are expected at the weekend gathering from as far away as Wisconsin. The event is open to natives and non-natives. And at the Stampede last night in Calgary, rodeo and chuck wagons took a back seat to a stunt show. The highlights of the show included a guy blowing himself up inside a coffin. He lived through it. And the son of Evel Knievel, Robbie, broke one of his own records, jumping his motorcycle over 15 Mack trucks. "13 trucks would have been a record for Knievel. He has crashed in several previous attempts of the stunt, which requires a top speed of 80 miles per hour. To world news now. It's a busy weekend for American politics, and 2 bungee accidents prompt one state to shut down the sport. We begin with news about a setback in the Ross Perot campaign. Ross Perot is in hot water with some black voters after his speech at the NAACP convention in Nashville. Perot was criticized for continually referring to African Americans as your people.
Financially, at least, it's going to be a long, hot summer, right? Now, I don't have to tell you who gets hurt first when this sort of thing happens, do I? Your people do. Your people do.
Bill Clinton also appeared at the convention with a much warmer reception. They're getting the band ready for Bill Clinton and others at the U.S. Democratic National Convention. Delegates are already pouring into New York City for the event set to get underway on Monday. Jerry Brown still promising a challenge to Clinton. He's got the confirmed support of at least 600 delegates at this point. Inside the convention hall, reporters and technicians are setting up for the live coverage, which is going to dominate the U.S. airwaves next week. They have shut down bungee jumping all over Florida. This man was one of the last to take the plunge.
It was wild. Best thing I've done in a long time. It was an experience I've never had before.
State regulators in Florida reacted in the wake of 2 serious bungee accidents in Michigan. They pulled the plug on thrill seekers this afternoon.
Keep the bungee!
Bungee operators say they're being unfairly punished in spite of a clean safety record. Coming up, taking in the Street Performers Festival. We will take you there when Eyewitness News returns.